Ladies and gentlemen, welcome into the New Fashion Conservatives podcast. I'm your host, Justin Phillips. With me, as always, is the man who is always monitoring the situation, Shadow Governor Voss.
Robin Voss's strongest soldier.
And with us tonight, we have two of my favorite voices in the conservative movement returning to the program, and their post-April 7th election takes have been honest, spicy, and on point, and that's Eric Brooks and Nicole Balistreri.
Good to be back. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for having me.
So before we get into the gloom and doom of last week's elections, we have to talk about the positives, I think, a little bit. You know, I heard J.D. Vance earlier last week talking about the perils of blackpilling. He said civilization was not built overnight. It's not saved overnight. Stay involved, be patient, and don't let disappointment turn into checking out of the system entirely. Blackpilling is how you give power to the forces that are trying to destroy what our ancestors have built. So it's easy to blackpill after an election like this with the Supreme Court going as far left as it has. It's easy to go on Zillow and start searching for homes in red states. But, people have to remember that, I've said this before, that the pendulum always swings back. The Dems had a trifecta in the state in 2009 and 10. It was divided government through most of the early 2000s, flip-flopping control in the 90s, and Dems had control of the legislature with Tommy as governor in the 1980s. So let's at least talk for a little bit about the good things that happen. I still think the fundamentals of the conservative movement and conservative candidates that are good, are strong. We have to look at some of those local elections. Most importantly, Steve Ponto, who defeated an absolute abhorrent, repugnant socialist asshat named Mike Alquist in Brookfield by a sizable margin. I think that's something that Shadow Gov really wants to lean into. So I'll turn it over to him.
First of all, I just wanted to talk about the black pillars for just a moment because they are the most annoying, irredeemable people in the world. And you can be redeemed if you just don't blackpill immediately. Like, this is how I felt about Tuesday. And then obviously we'll get into some of the other stuff. But it's that meme where it's the guy in front of the gallows. He's got the rope around his neck and he says, "First time." So like at this point, just let everything else roll off your back. It can't get much worse. It can, but glass half full type of thing. But going back to, yes, there were some silver lining wins. I think there are a lot of things that you can take away from it. But of course, the black pillars just say, everything's on fire, abandon ship. And that's easy to say, but it's also, it takes a little bit of brain power, like a little bit of neuron activation to realize that you can do some things to make a change. And yes, I think the race in Brookfield, I think there were some unique dynamics that resulted in, what the win for Steve Ponto, the Republican aligned candidate. So there is a blueprint of at least some positive takeaways. Okay. So I just urge people that if you're going to blackpill, just, you get 24 hours. After the 24 hours is up, you got to start getting back to work.
Yeah, I mean, I think there was more that went wrong than went right on Tuesday. But to your point, I thought going into that Ponto race, it was going to be a 1 or 2 point race either way. I thought Hallquist, with all the money coming in for him, had the edge, especially just, I've done a lot of knocking doors in Brookfield, and I've seen where that community has started to shift. So I was very surprised to see Ponto win overwhelmingly, but I think that's just because a number of factors, but Hallquist was he was just a bridge too far for Brookfield, and Ponto was the known quantity, the longtime mayor, someone who just, had built bridges across political lines and had a lot of respect of a lot of people. Grant Scaife in Washington County Circuit Court judge race, finally beating an Evers appointee in deep red Washington County. They, up until this Tuesday, I guess they still technically have one, but they had not for long, thanks to Grant, but they had 4 of 4 circuit court seats in Washington County, one of the most Republican counties in the state, all Evers appointees, all radical leftists. And Grant Scaife defeated Gordon Leach, the Evers appointee, soundly, and he did so by actively advertising that he's a conservative Republican and running on the values that matter to Republican voters in Washington County and touting the fact that he has support from Republicans. And he won overwhelmingly.
I think it was like 60-40.
Yeah, 60-40.
Nicole, do you have a silver lining from last Tuesday that really stands out to you? Or
I do. And mine's a little bit more touchy-feely. And that is when you, I think, step back from, the specifics of some of these like key wins. It really is encouraging to me because I really believe in Wisconsin. I really believe in the people of Wisconsin. I really believe in everybody up north, in the Driftless, in Washington County, wherever you are. I really believe in the overall common sense and reasonableness of the people in Wisconsin. And I think when you're a candidate and you actually step out and do the work that some of these folks did that allowed them to be successful in these races where maybe could have gone a different way, it's because they actually took the time to speak to these folks and actually activate them, because we're not dumb people here. It's just, you need to take the time to understand everyone, and you need to take the time to speak to them and meet them where they're at. And I guess that's sort of my silver lining.
One last thing I know we'll get into. Obviously, there's a ton to get into, but as kind of a general principle, first of all, it's never the voters' fault for who it's on the candidate for basically portraying themselves the right message. We don't just, yes, people can individually research, look into stuff, and come to their own opinions, but it depends on what those candidates put out there. So it's a lot is on the candidate. Second of all, anything can be messaged correctly. People like to say, and there are messages that are less popular and more popular, but to say that there is something that is absolutely foregone conclusion you can't message, I just don't believe that. If you message it properly, you can get people to believe pretty much anything. And I'm not saying that the crazy ideas are, by Republicans or whatever, but I'm just saying that, if people are worried that, I can't do this because of X, Y, and Z, and I'm sure we'll talk about it here in a little bit. You just have to be more creative. It's going to take a little bit of extra work. So I think people should know that.
Mm-hmm. I just want to highlight one more win. Someone who came on the show, has been a friend of the show for a while, was Matt Rosick. Winning in Oconomowoc, which is an area where you'd think it's a foregone conclusion that the conservative candidate would win. But Oconomowoc, again, like a lot of other communities, especially before WisRed got involved in some of these organizations, they would elect far left mayors. Then those people still write op-eds to the newspaper saying they should vote for not the conservative candidates. But Matt overcame that, and he I think ran just a really solid race, got a lot of great help to knock those doors, and good for him for winning that one. So Eric.
Yeah, Oconomowoc politics is honestly one of the strangest political dynamics that I've seen in a while, because a lot of times it's not necessarily just right versus left like we see in some other communities. There are various factions between each, and it's a lot of kind of, for lack of a better term, old money, who and the relationships that you built. And so you would look at Oconomowoc and you look at the fact that it's 60-40 community roughly in November, but a lot of times when it comes to these localized races, it's relationship based. And I think Rosick did a really good job. Mm-hmm. One other race that I want to shout out is the new Richmond School Board race out in St. Croix County. Another red community that has just, for whatever reason, had radical leftists elected to their school board, and it absolutely just blew up this year because they had this crazy bathroom policy that the Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty is now suing over, or a locker room policy. And this school board in this ostensibly very conservative area in a very conservative county allowed for this to happen. Parents rose up. The school board told them to go pound sand. And I believe the school board president lost, who was spearheading this.
Correct.
Mm-hmm. And Christy Westland, who was the conservative-backed candidate for the seat, she won. Now, there were two other candidates on the ballot who jumped in late as write-in campaign candidates, and they worked very hard. They did everything they needed to do to get their name out, but it's so hard to run as a write-in.
It's impossible, basically.
But if they were actually, they still received quite a few votes.
It was it was more than 3,000 write-ins. Mm-hmm. And now for school board,
split between two people. Yeah. And it wasn't enough. But if those two people were on the ballot, I think they're able to completely reverse the dynamics of that board. And I'm blanking on one of the candidates' names, but Dom Ventura was one of them, and he's just one of the most tireless workers that I've ever seen. He used to work for AFP, he might still, I don't know. but he is someone who's just a workhorse on doors and super personable guy. And I hope that he steps up and runs and gets his name on the ballot next time because he's going to win.
Nicole, any final thoughts on the silver lining?
I think the fact that the phone calls that I've received and the text messages that I've received from people that are re-energized is a great thing, especially in the wake of some, like in my community, I live in New Berlin, and we had kind of like a school board upset. Our school board in New Berlin has been all conservative for a while now. And the two conservative candidates running, only one of them actually won his race. The other guy had some issues, so I'm not totally surprised by that. But there were a lot of people, even in my local community, that were like, well, what are we going to do? What is the next race going to be like? And I think it's like a little bit of a wake-up call. And people are talking about how to do things differently now when, maybe a year or two ago, having like strong conversations about, problems and solutions was not really as welcome, I think. So, that's a good thing.
Yeah, before we get to the real elephant in the room, one of the two like real bad losses I think the conservative side took was another school board, and that was in Menominee Falls. They had a 3-candidate slate of conservatives and a 3-candidate slate of liberals, and all 3 liberals defeated all 3 conservatives. Now, I think that has something to do with one of the candidates. Who, I talked to some people about this one because I was ready to just kind of jump in and kind of throw him under the bus, but he really ran because they thought they needed a 3rd candidate, and he kind of just threw his name in, but he had, Jefferson Davis had some personal issues, or not personal, he had some political issues that have been long simmering in Menominee Falls. But, I'm not going to now, after talking to some folks, I'm not going to totally throw him under the bus. I think he was just making a good faith effort to be that 3rd guy, but I think in total, candidate quality matters, campaign quality matters, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. But, Jefferson Davis, I think probably hurt more than helped the rest of that slate, and that cost 3 conservative seats in the Menominee Falls School Board.
That is one of the problems, or I guess benefits of running as a slate. If all boats rise, well, they can also drag. So, yeah. And
can I say something about school boards?
Yeah,
really quick?
Absolutely.
So something that I've noticed, and I think as we talk about what to do differently going forward, or kind of the environment going forward, the thing we have to remember about school board races, and I think Brooks, give me your opinion on this. When you're talking about parental involvement at school board meetings and being engaged with candidates or wanting to run or whatever, I'll speak for myself. We are tired. We have kids that we have to raise. They have activities. We have jobs, et cetera. And I think as we kind of lose some of the gas from the COVID era and, a lot of the crazy gender policies and stuff that we have had to deal with, people are losing some steam. They're losing some steam on their engagement. They're losing some steam on how do they, continue to make this a priority for their kids and really get out for these races. So that is really something that has to be considered going forward.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. For folks who don't know, I'm on my school board in school district Waukesha, very proud, very blessed to serve. And anger is always a more motivating energizer than contentment. And so, this is where I first met Nicole, was at a Waukesha School Board meeting where, people were pissed off about masking and quarantines and all that. And it was packed wall to wall, almost overwhelmingly with conservatives. They were mad about what was going on with COVID. They were mad with what was going on with the books and the materials and the inappropriate stuff that they were seeing in their classrooms. And when we were motivated and really organized, you couldn't stop us. But then, we get on the board, we reverse all of that stuff. We are doing all the right things, but people aren't as excited to, I think the mindset is, okay, well, the board's fine. They're doing great work now. I don't have to be engaged anymore. And you are always, whether it's school board, the legislature, any seat, you're always one bad election cycle away from losing everything. And sometimes those wake-up calls, yeah, they suck to have to sit here and be like, we lost. We had 2 really, really good conservative candidates in Waukesha. Betty Koenig, who I serve with, she's a teacher in the district for a long, long time, beloved. I literally saw a home not too far away from me, and the yard signs don't vote, but They had a Chris Taylor 4x8 sign and a Betty Koenig yard sign for school board because people love her. They love her.
That's impressive.
And Chase Allen, who ran, he's a homeschool dad. He knocked, I believe, more doors than any candidate in the state of Wisconsin this year. Like, he worked super hard. Came up 108 votes shy. And we'll get to this in a moment, but if we did not have a 20-point anchor at the top of the ticket, I think Chase wins. And I told him this, losing sucks. I've never seen a more graceful person in defeat than Chase. Just very, very humble. And I hope to God that he stays involved, because he is an absolute rock star. And, it was just an unfortunate set of circumstances that he, were outside of his control. But yeah, we need those wake-up calls, and we need our people to get back energized and realize what's at stake.
The price of liberty is eternal vigilance, and quite literally eternal. You can't let off, and it's what the Democrats are really good at. They're always angry, first of all. Now we'll see. I mean, Trump can't be around forever, so we'll see if that's sustainable. But yeah, that's all I got.
Yeah, and so another one of shifting a little bit, but staying in Waukesha, was the mayor's race, and you had Scott Allen, who's a strong conservative. He's been on the show. We talked to him with the Heartland Post, who, ran into a buzzsaw. That was $250,000 in money that came into his very left-wing opponent, which is, you can never prepare for something like that or plan for something like that, but you always have to be prepared for something like that, a large amount of money might drop in against you. And, Waukesha itself is what, I think 52, 53%. And so it's always a little bit uphill there, but, he I think had a mailer that wasn't as well thought through or as simple as it needed to be. Of course, that money that came from the Dem opponent is so much that kind of overwhelmed him. I think Scott was probably relying on her reputation.
And his as well, too.
Yeah. And his better reputation.
He's represented a majority of the city, portions of the city for years now. So,
but my cope is that Waukesha has never been the best voters or the decision makers when it comes to the mayor. They've put up some real rough ones and some disappointing ones in prior elections. So this just continues, but gets more amplified.
Well, and one thing is people like to extrapolate local politics into November, which, trust me, I do plenty of that. However, people underestimate how much value, I guess, you get by having an R or a D next to your name, and that just changes so much. So, and obviously, let's set the record straight. I know Democrats are saying this is a flip from Republican to Democrat, but Sean Riley, Kamala Harris guy, need I say more?
Yeah, that was a really tough race. I mean, you pointed it out. We don't need to delve into it too much, but I mean, there are always mistakes made on campaigns, but you look at the money that came in against Scott, $250,000. I think fundamentally, I don't think they were necessarily expecting that much. And, you got to expect money's going to come in, but I don't know if they necessarily knew that there was going to be this much money coming in. And again, he still only came up a point shy.
Yeah, it's still very close.
And like city of Waukesha is a very 50-50 community. It's very, like, there's some very working class parts. I think Schimmel lost it by a couple hundred votes, but then 2 of our 3 school board candidates won the city outright last year, the same year that Schimmel was on the ballot. So there are a lot of kind of swingy voters there. There's a lot of stuff on Halvin Slavin, the garbage fee that she put in as the city council president. So many people were pissed off about that. The water hikes that
and those are local issues.
Those are local issues.
That's not like a national push or anything.
I just don't know how much those were really talked about. And then you see, I got like 6 mailers from either Scott's opponent or the third party groups that were supporting her, or the local Democrat Party. And one of them was just absolutely brutal, basically saying that Scott Allen doesn't care about the Waukesha parade victims, because he put out a press release a few years ago that said that the memorial should be privately funded. And when I see this mailer come through and I'm getting it, and I'm like, oh no. Like, as soon as I saw that, I'm like, oh, that's gonna sway some people. But yeah, to Shadow Governor Voss's point, like, this isn't a flip. Waukesha's had more center left mayors than they've had conservative mayors in recent history. But it's not necessarily a harbinger. And again, he only lost by 1. If there's not a 20-point anchor at the top of the ticket, Scott might be able to overcome it, because he only lost the city by about 500 votes. I think Maria lost it by about 2,500 votes.
So let's get into that. Nicole, I'm going to let you lead off this section. Maria Lazar ran, honestly, sincerely, one of the worst campaigns imaginable, and lost by a substantial margin that make Brad Schimmel and even Dan Kelly's losses look acceptable. So, Nicole, I'm going to let you lead this one off. I know you had a couple of really great takes on a couple of Facebook posts and comments, and I want to let you lead off with this one.
Yeah. So, I mean, first of all, obviously, like, let's start off by saying, like, look, nobody hates Maria, right? We've all met her. She's a lovely woman. She does a good job. But you cannot get into a race like this and not be willing to get into the mud with the pigs and fight. This is not a game. This is high stakes. This is important, right? So in the private sector, right, at a certain level, I'm very lucky, very blessed. I'm a vice president of marketing and communications in the financial services industry. I also have my own business. What'd you say?
Congratulations.
Just saw the promotion.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. And I have my own business, right? I work with, a very select group of clients, obviously, because I don't have tons of time. But at a certain point, right, there's an expectation. I cannot go to work and not perform. I get compensated well, and so therefore the expectations are high. When you are jumping in to run for office and to take a job where it is vital, where there are vital things on the line, we do not have time for somebody's nice and they did their best and let's talk about our feelings. It sounds terrible. It sounds bad. It's the reality, right? I don't really care. Like, you don't get in the ring if you're not prepared to throw a couple punches, number one. And Maria, that was some of the weirdest, worst creative I've ever seen come out of a campaign. It looked like a funeral home. I don't really know what that was. It was some of the strangest, most bizarre messaging. And, Brooks will talk a lot about that, I'm sure, talking about how you're not a conservative, really refusing to kind of identify or discuss key issues. And, the lawyers listening will probably get pissed, right? Because it's like, well, judicial ethics, and this is the standard, and this is how you have to speak. No, you don't. Because other judges ran a partisan race and they won, right? So I think it was a failure on multiple fronts. And I think, I gave this analogy in a Facebook post, because I've been hibernating from X for a while because I needed to leave. But let's look at it this way. Let's pretend it's cars. You have the blue car company and the red car company. The blue car company, they give 20% of all their sales to causes that they support. And they do a really good job of talking about their safety features and their research and their technology. And the CEO of the company goes on commercials and talks about how great the car is and how they do so much research and how they've listened to their customers. And oh, by the way, we give 20% of our sales to these causes. And when you go and you're going to go buy a car from this company, you walk in the door of the dealership and they have snacks and coffee and everybody says hi to you, makes you feel welcome. Then you do a test drive and you can ask questions. And then when you're talking to them, they tell you how great the blue car is. And then you buy the car and they give you a hat and a sticker and they say, welcome to the family. Okay. Then you go to the red car dealership and you walk in and you notice that, well, there aren't so many people here. And that's probably because the red car company, they don't believe in advertising because they think, well, we just build a really good car. And so that's enough, right? Like, our cars are the best cars. So people should just know that our cars are the best. And they don't believe in advertising because It's not that important. And when they do communicate with people, they talk about the heritage of American cars and how all cars are valid and all American cars are wonderful. And it doesn't matter which car you pick because all American cars are great. And then they continue to lose sales because people are going over to the blue car company because they understand what they're buying and they feel like they're part of the blue car family. And instead of looking at how they can get more people to know that red cars are better, the CEO just goes, well, we just make a better car and all of you guys are dumb and you should just know that. So that's where we're at.
Shadow Gov.
It's not a good spot.
No, it's not. It's not.
There's my least favorite thing is, and Nicole mentioned, just the judicial ethics thing. I don't know what it is really. I mean, I just like, okay, you can't be like unethical. What does unethical mean for judges? You can't prejudge cases. And I you learn from the best. Chris Taylor, at her debate with Maria Lazar. Oh, if you were on the court, would you, or what were your thoughts? I don't remember the exact question, but it was something along the lines of Act 10, and stuff. And so Chris Taylor very smartly said, oh, I can't comment on ongoing litigation. However, my family was a union family and we benefited greatly from that union job. And it's like, how simple that is? That is such like, everyone knows what you're saying. You just mentioned the word union. You don't even have to say it, or you don't have to mention anything with Act 10. You could just talk about the union itself. And so this is not like I understand that, we all have some experience with messaging and I think we all have good ideas, but we don't even have to overcomplicate it that much. And so it's one of my biggest gripes. And I know that speaking of messaging, the crime angle is always something that is in judges' races. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying I get tired of the overdoneness of the crime ads. Trust me. I think we overdo it. However, not touching it at all is just as horrible of a take. So,
Brooks.
Yeah, where do I even begin? When back in August, when Justice Bradley announced that she wasn't going to run again, I posted it on social media, and I've said this in the past before. I've said it basically after every Supreme Court election for the last several years. If you are a candidate who wants to run for these seats and you are not willing to run a political partisan style race where you are actively messaging on the issues that people care about and are instead talking about judicial philosophy or judicial ethics or some other weak-kneed legal community bullshit, you are going to lose. And I would rather these people not run at all than waste our time. And that is exactly what this campaign was a waste of time. Let me be clear. We would have been better off not running a candidate for this seat than running whatever the fuck Maria Lazar's campaign was, because she actively sunk down ballot votes and was just from the moment she launched her campaign. It was a 6-minute rollout video that was just playing the worst hits of every failed Supreme Court candidate, and then doesn't mention the word conservative once. And I had to listen to it again, which felt like torture, to be like, did she really not mention the word conservative once? Yeah. And that just became a harbinger for this race, because time and time again, she refused to call herself active, not just refused to call, would correct people when they called her a conservative. She said it was amusing that people think she's the conservative candidate. She refused to say she's the Republican. She would constantly correct people and say, no, I'm an independent. I've never been a member of a Republican Party. And then we wonder why Republicans don't vote for her. There are several Marquette poll takeaways where, repeatedly 80% of voters are saying talk about issues, including Republicans. But the most recent one, only 66% of Republicans have a favorable opinion of the United States Supreme Court. And that's a conservative majority. Our people fundamentally don't trust lawyers. They do not trust the justice system because they've seen it weaponized against them time and time again. And just about every conservative judge or justice nationally, or look at Hagedorn in the state of Wisconsin, has failed them and betrayed them. So when you are going out there and running this mealy-mouthed, oh, I'm not a Republican, I'm an independent, well, no shit, they're not going to support you. They don't trust you, and you're not talking to them about the issues. And I don't want to hear, oh, this is the voters' fault.
Oh my God.
You're not even trying to appeal to them because you clearly have a resentment. And this is a bigger problem with the conservative legal establishment. It is largely full of old ivory tower, never Trump types who absolutely hate what the Republican Party has become. And they believe that it is the more principled thing to just hand the Democrats a 7-0 court than to dare to run a race in modern times that appeals to Republican voters. And it's from, you have the stupid 10-minute mini documentary Beyond the Robe that sounds like a bad porn title that nobody wants to watch. I'm going to make this my fantasy football punishment to make people watch it on a 12-hour loop. That might violate the Geneva Accords, but like, who asked for that? And then and the thing is, like, I've been I pointed these things out proactively first because I was hoping that she would correct them. I didn't have a lot of faith, but I was hoping that enough people would be like, you know what, you're right. But then I'm just like, I people got mad that I was overly negative, but what was there to be positive about? And I wanted to get it out there because if you're just doing the negative bit after the fact, you're just Monday morning quarterback and nobody's going to take it seriously. Mm-hmm. We need to get this stuff out there, and we do ourselves no favors by pretending like, oh no, she was a good candidate. There were just all these other things. No, she was a terrible candidate. Historically, one of the worst candidates we've ever seen. She lost 7 of 8 congressional districts of the state of Wisconsin.
That's crazy.
Like, she lost bright red counties.
Like, I thought, so I said back in October when she went on Upfront and openly said that she would refuse Donald Trump's endorsement, that she was going to lose by 20 points.
You know who also refuses Donald Trump endorsements? Democrats.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter.
She was chasing a voter that doesn't exist. She was trying to appeal to the fact that the only issue that this woman would talk about was abortion is fucking bananas. Like,
she was trying to run a campaign that is better suited for like 1996.
Yeah. And look, saying that you support, like, you would uphold the 20-week abortion, that you would uphold the current law. That is a fine response to a question about your stance on the issue. It should not be the focal point of your campaign, especially when you're going up against
Chris Taylor,
a literal former Planned Parenthood employee. Like, you're not going to win over any people who want abortion when Chris Taylor's the alternative. What you are doing is alienating a whole lot of pro-life voters. And I heard from several people in the pro-life community that they had people who thought Chris Taylor was the conservative candidate on abortion because Maria Lazar's messaging on it was so bad.
You know,
insane.
If in anything, though, Chris Taylor's like Planned Parenthood, it almost gives you a license to be even a little bit more to the center, or more to the right of center on abortion. Like, hey, we have on one spectrum, literal Planned Parenthood person. On the other side, we have, in the middle. You might have a little bit of license to voters to be I'm not saying you have to like be heartbeat or like no abortion. I'm just saying you can be a little bit right of center on messaging. And no.
And, a lot's been made about, well, Trump voters don't show up in these races. And yes, there are legitimate demographic
Two things
problems.
Can be true at the same time.
When I was knocking doors for Brad Schimmel in Waukesha a year ago, I ran into a house. There's a guy who had a Trump flag flying high on his pole, had a Trump sign in his yard, had "Don't Tread on Me" and Thin Blue Line and Trump bumper sticker on his pickup truck. And he's working on his truck. And Schimmel was endorsed by Trump. And I thought this was going to be shooting fish in the barrel. And he literally said, nope. I only vote for Trump because he's the only politician I trust. There are some people that no matter what you do are never going to vote for anybody other than Trump. I get that. But we're not even trying. And I just think, like, you're not going to capture the rural voter in Clark County by talking about all the different types of courts that you sit on and your accolades and where you went to law school. The only JD that these people care about is JD Vance. They don't care about where you went to law school. They don't care about your criteria. They only care about what you're going to do for them. Most people are never going to have any interaction with the justice system. They don't care about judicial prudence or the role of the courts because they're never going to interact with it. You know what they do interact with? Their property tax bill. And Maria Lazar never once mentioned the 400-year veto. How do you not make the focal point of your campaign that the liberal Supreme Court rubber stamped a 400-year property tax increase, the largest single-year tax increase in 30 years, because the Democrat Supreme Court upheld the governor's veto? And
literally teed up.
And if you elect, and by the way, if you elect Chris Taylor, she's going to gun for Act 10 and she's going to make it 10 times worse. But if you vote for me, I'm going to fight to make Wisconsin more affordable for Wisconsin families. It's such an easy message, and they just didn't do it. And it's because, look, I'm sure we'll get into like some of the conversation around consultants and the party and everything. But like sometimes if the candidate's not going to listen to the people who are giving your advice, you could be given great advice. I'm not saying that was the case here, but you could be given great advice. If the candidate doesn't listen to you, it doesn't really matter. You cannot fix a bad candidate, but you can prevent it by not running them in the first place.
Yeah, I think you give me so many things I want to touch on, but yes, I think there is a part, and especially in the conservative legal community, that would rather politely lose than win with someone who's going to quote unquote break the judicial ethics. Because the fact is, the Democrats only care about one thing, and that's power, and it's gaining and keeping power. And until Republicans are willing to play at that level in these court races, I think we're talking to people who want to play at that level. Yep. But I feel like we might be being held back. There's these type of candidates that, who said, oh, well, I lost. And there's the same people who said, well, Mitt Romney was a good man that ran a good campaign and stayed out of the dirt.
Yeah, then we got Obamacare.
Right.
To
and
be
then
fair, Romney was like half the reason for that.
And Nicole, you said, the way you said something remind me, it's like the Glenn Ross of like, oh, you're a good person. I don't give a shit. Yeah. You're a good parent. Go home and play with your fucking kids. You work hard. So do washing machines. Like, do what it takes to win an election. And we didn't have someone like that. And the last thing I want to say before, Nicole, I'm going to turn it over to you. So I had to pull out this tweet from Liz Wolnick because it just, I think, so succinctly explains the challenges that AFP and the YRs and every group that was out knocking doors had, is that when you knock doors for a judicial candidate, you can talk about integrity and the rule of law, which again, no one knows what the fuck it actually means till you're blue in the face. You meet with a cool, is she a liberal or a conservative? 90% of the time. When you try to play the nonpartisan card, you look disingenuous. So
100%.
Yeah. And she's someone who knocks a ton of doors and does the work. So I trust her, a lot on this one.
As someone who's run in a nonpartisan election, air quotes around nonpartisan, I would literally just, first thing I say when I knock on the door is, hey, I'm Eric. I'm a Republican, or I'm a conservative running for school board, because that is what most people want to hear. Mm-hmm. And if you're just pussyfooting around it and not telling people what you stand for, they don't care. And I said it. I wrote a guest column for the Heartland Post. You can check it out at theheartlandpost.com. Hottest news site in Wisconsin right now by far. Democrats run these races like they are running for president. Republicans run these races like they are running for president of the Bar Association. They believe that their constituency is the legal community. Democrats understand that their constituency is Democrat voters. Democrats talk directly to their voters. Maria Lazar talked down to them. And she's not alone. Other people have done it too. But until we figure that out, we are going to continue to lose. And anybody out there who is trying to spin this as anything beyond a candidate issue, there's obviously other factors too. But anybody who's just ignoring the obvious thing in the room is disingenuous. They're doing it because they want to maintain their access with the cool kids and they don't want to offend people. And they are doing more long-term damage to this movement by not being willing to engage in the conversations that we need to have so this doesn't happen again.
Nicole, I can tell you really want to jump in. I'm going to turn it over to you and just let it rip.
Yeah, I am so offended by the commentary of that it's the voters' fault, that it's that those rural Trump voters that they don't come out unless he's on the ballot. I am so offended by the concept of blaming the voter because your messaging and your campaign sucked. That is the most elitist, silver spoon ass thing that I could possibly ever think of, because whose job is it to drive voter turnout? Whose job is it, right?
Candidate.
So, and it is so disrespectful to me, because when I think about who they're talking about, I think about, the guy at Quick Trip at 6 a.m. who's getting his coffee and his breakfast sandwich, and he's going to go lay tile and put on a roof somewhere. That's who they're talking about. They're talking about the guy that lives up north that, whatever, lives in a cabin or is like, they're talking about these people, these families. And it is like, why it's not their problem that you don't know how to talk to them. It's not their problem that you don't understand what matters to them. It isn't their problem that they didn't that you didn't reach them. It's your problem. So stop with the bullshit. It is so elitist. And that is so gross to me because we're not supposed to be that party. We're not. And to be honest with you, that's why Donald Trump was successful with them, because he was not that guy. He got in the fucking garbage truck. You know what I mean? And it was like
electric.
And you might think like, oh, that was like, so like for the hyper online, we're like, oh my God, cute stunt. That meant something for people, whether you want to admit it or not, and we could talk all day long about how things are going now with him and whatever. And that's a story for another day, but
he got there for a
wrong
reason
to blame the voter. It's wrong.
And it's not to say that like Maria Lazar needed to throw on a MAGA hat and drape herself in a MAGA flag and run around the state. Like
not at all.
Because then that comes off as disingenuous when you don't believe it, and people see right through that too.
Because they'll figure that out.
But you need to be able to talk about the issues that they care about. We mentioned the new Richmond School Board race, where the liberals in that community are basically telling young girls, yeah, if you don't want to have a boy in your locker room, you can use this private gender neutral stall. It's insanity. And how that does not become a major talking point in your campaign, or how Chris Taylor's laundry list of terrible legislative just agenda. She's one of the most radical. She
represented like the isthmus.
I don't want to hear these people who are like, well, she has to talk like she's an independent because she has to pick up moderates. Chris Taylor is one of the most radical politicians in the state of Wisconsin, and she won the state by 20 fucking points.
You should be able to pick up moderates naturally by comparison.
You do not, and like frankly, like these races are hyper partisan. They're not that many independent. It's about mobilizing your base. You're not persuading many people, especially not by just chasing voters that aren't ever going to vote for you. How do you not pick apart her legislative record and just put every single
online for everyone to see?
The one thing that I saw there people talking about was how she voted against Marcy's law. Nobody fucking knows what Marcy's law is.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's a good attack if people knew what Marcy's law is.
Yeah, but you have to explain that whole thing first. And really,
which is a messaging problem again.
Let's not even forget that all you could have done is run a conservative news, a TV ad with Chris Taylor's voice. I mean, she's a screeching hag, and you should have picked up votes that way.
I think her picture alone,
could have.
I mean, there are so many things that you can do that without even touching "quote unquote" judicial ethics, which are fake and gay by any stretch of the imagination. They're literally just made up. They're like guidelines. Pirates of the Caribbean. They're guidelines.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and if you're worried, like I hear this all the time. Well, if she talks about this and she gets on the court, she's gonna have to recuse.
No, she doesn't.
Let's fucking worry about that when she gets on the court.
Yep.
If you're not if you don't even get on the court, it doesn't matter. I have all the respect in the world for Justice Kelly. I think he's one of the brightest people that have ever been on the Supreme Court. Wasn't a good candidate, and I remember telling him during the Janet race that, dude, you need to run the race that Janet's running. You need to actively campaign on issues. And he told me, if I do that, I'll be a lousy jurist. I'm like, well, if you don't do it, you're not going to be a jurist at all. Like, these people are more like, well, if I get on, I might have to do these. First of all, no, you don't. Janet Protasewicz openly said that she was going to rig the maps, and nothing happened to her. These things have absolutely no weight or merit behind them. And even if they did, cross that bridge when you get to it, because if you don't get elected, it doesn't mean shit.
Nicole, final thought?
Accountability and reality. I think that we have to really, our party leaders, our candidates, the same people that get recycled through all these campaigns, they need to start having some accountability. If I went to work and did a shit job, really shit, I wouldn't be able to go walk in the door at a competitor and get the same job. And I also wouldn't be able to keep my job. So I just think that we have to start taking some radical accountability.
So yeah, let's talk about that next. And I want to lead off with a Facebook post before we get into this.
The intellectual
well,
powerhouse Facebook.
Might not surprise you that we're going to start this way. That Brian Schimming posted on April 7th of doing a 5:15 p.m. press conference in Pewaukee at the Lazar event. I sure hope she wins. She'd be great on the court. But either way, when I get asked to go out and do these things, even in the uncertain circumstances, I go out. God knows I'm not perfect by any stretch, but I won't cut and run when it gets tough. Now, the fact is, in order to cut and run, you have to actually be doing something before that. But
that's like a concession speech.
But that right. It's a pre-concession speech, and it's giving off that Marshawn Lynch vibe of like, I'm just here so I won't get fined. Like, I'm ready to throw in the towel. So
that's not a great look.
I think we all know like shimming needs to go, and that's only just the tip of the iceberg. But it's not just enough for us to say that or talk about that. We started the pod, Shadow Gov and I, because we were so fed up.
Yeah, and I
with
think
RPW.
The name of this episode is going to be the name of the first. So episode 1 was the state of the GOP,
right?
And now we're the state of the GOP in the year 2026.
Yeah, I mean, you and I were talking, and Eric just mentioned it before. Like last year's loss was the canary in the coal mine. The 2024 loss we could have written off as like, well, the Dems had a competitive primary. And the presidential election, it was on the same day. It was a real tough one.
We had a lot of cope.
Yeah. And now we knew it was wrong. But to me, it seems like, at least online, and I'm terminally online, that the consensus on the Wisconsin GOP needs a tear down and rebuild. But the broader conversation is, what do we do now? And it seems to already have moved past the idea of getting rid of Brian Shimming. That seems to be a foregone conclusion. He's finishing off like a coach does. They're giving him the last couple games of the season just to let him ride it out. But fine folks at AFP, including Megan Novak, who had a column in the Heartland Post, which said, "Don't just complain. It's time to get up and work. How can you help shape Wisconsin's future?" That's the important conversation right now. So I don't want to belabor the point of like, let's get rid of Brian Shimming. Like, we could have spent 60, 70, 80 minutes just going, let's get rid of Brian Shimming. And of course, yes. Well, but then what comes next?
Well, if we were the Badger State Resistance podcast, that's what we would do. We would just complain and say that over and over again. But this has been a huge sticking point for myself. Like, I think Brooks broke down the race itself, and there's more to it. I mean, we could be here, do a full 2 hours just on that. But it is so reaction, and trust me, I'm on the Bird app too. Like, I'm a reactionary too. However, I also realize that just calling for Brian Shimming's head, like, doesn't really do anything. Like, it's just I'm angry. I need to direct my anger at something. Well, the buck stops here is the most logical place for it to go. Mm-hmm. However, people kind of this argument though that we need to get rid of Brian, it basically totally dismisses everything that the candidate did, which is why we led with what did the candidate do or not do? And it says, well, the party wasn't there to support her. The party didn't do anything. It's like, how does a party step in when there's nothing to like lift up? Like, if there's no like it's so hard to find a cohesive message, and then you're just kind of throwing stuff at the wall and hoping it's sticking. Like, the party is supposed to augment, to supplement what the candidate is already doing and provide extra infrastructure that the candidate doesn't already have. But if there's nothing there, like, what are you supposed to do? It's almost, I don't even know, as someone that's not in the party, like, if you are in there, what do? You can't just dog on your candidate, of course, and you're stuck. And so it's an impossible situation where you obviously want to help, you want to win, but do you have the ability? Is do they have the ability? And so you're caught between a rock and a hard place. So, and people like to say that, oh, our fundraising is bad. Yes, it is. It is bad. However, people forget, like, it's been kind of lackluster for like 5 or 6 years, really, more or less. I mean, it's trailed off. Yes. But like, people want to act like we haven't been in this position for a couple of years now. I mean, I know what the Dan Kelly 1 race was 2020, right? So, and then Dan Kelly 2 is 2023. So, like, guys, it's 2026. Like, we've done this for a couple of years now. Okay, so don't act like fundraising has been a problem just for this year. So I urge people. You can have whatever opinion about the chairman and the state party. You can have those opinions. All I ask that if you're going to have those opinions, I hope you get involved and actually do something about it, whether that's donating your time or your money.
Time, talent, and treasure.
Yeah. I mean, it's easy. It's very cheap to lob, a bunch of bombs from your little Twitter app. Trust me, I love doing that. But there's so much more that could be done, that can be done, and I just wish people would just like an ounce of nuance, or just like not just surface level. Think about it just a little bit more. So,
Nicole, I want to turn it over to you next.
So thank you. So I would like to think about this again from like a business perspective, right? And here's what I think should happen. And I'm just going to say a bunch of stuff, and I don't know how feasible it is, or what the rules are, or party constitution, or whatever.
Yeah.
But if you said to me, Nicole, how do you solve this problem? I would say you need to think like an activist investor group, and you need to stage a hostile takeover if you can't take over the party, and it needs to be remade. And what I mean by that is, so if there's an appetite from within the current party structure, right, I would say form an executive search committee, and you need to go out. And this executive search committee, by the way, should include both party people as well as donors, right? Like my dream team, it would be like Rebecca and Hovde and Voss and some of the other top, like the U-Lines or whoever, right? Create an executive search committee and go out and find a CFO or a CEO from a manufacturing company, somebody with an operations and a financial background that's either in Wisconsin or tied to Wisconsin, who doesn't need money, who's recently retired, looking to retire, whatever, and bring that person in and tell them, have at it, and make Nathan Drew Blood his or her chief of staff and say, go to work, and then create 3 lines of business that are going to be the new infrastructure: fundraising, get out the vote, and candidate recruitment and mentorship. Because we actually already have the YRs, and we have 1848, and then we just need a killer, like a Wolf of Wall Street fundraising killer, to go out and get money and treat all of those things like lines of business within the organization and run it like you're trying to turn a profit. So if you can get that buy-in from within the current system, do it that way. And if you can't, get a kitchen cabinet together of all those people and have the donors on that committee go to the party and say, the bank is closed until we undertake this executive search process, because it starts at the top. And then that person, if you've ever been in a corporate environment when there's an executive purge, that person will bring in their own people. They'll have their own ideas, but that's where kind of this committee comes in to sort of help shape who comes in. That's why you hire a chief of staff or whatever, but you got to start running it like you got to make money. And it's not money. You got to get money from donors, and you have to, that's definitely a financial aspect, but you have to start getting votes, and you have to start treating it like the serious business that it is. And I don't know how feasible all of that is. I could have just said a bunch of bullshit, but that's how I would solve the problem.
Eric?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good approach. Just bring in some basic business principles into it. I know Justin, you brought up you kind of made like the football coaching analogy. Yeah, you have a coach that isn't performing, but one thing that annoys the hell out of me in pro sports is when you fire the head coach and then promote the assistant head coach who learned under him, and then wonder why results aren't changing. Like, if you're going to do something like this, you do need to do a national search and look at what other states are doing and try to bring some of those people in, and you hire the top assistant deputy there and bring them in. To Shadow Governor Voss's point, though, yeah, there are obviously things that need to be done from a party level, and that needs to be part of this conversation. But it's very, very easy to make that the only part of the conversation.
It's a total cop-out
and overlook all the other things. Look, even if RPW had, even if we had Ryan Priebus in his heyday, raking in all this money, even if we had all the Epstein money that the Democrats have, there's not enough money in the world that is going to make Maria Lazar an electable candidate.
Sure.
And I've seen some people who are ripping on the party for how much money they spent on the race, and I agree. I think the amount of money they spent on this race is ridiculous. I would have spent $0 on Maria Lazar. I would have saved every single dollar to help elect Tom Tiffany as governor and help preserve majorities in the legislature, because Maria Lazar was a lost cause from the moment she hit send on that announcement video. What are you supposed to do as the Republican Party when the candidate you are backing refuses to say she's a Republican?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There's nothing.
No, I totally agree with that, and I want to say that I'm not excusing
Right.
her lack of performance and saying that it was only the party's fault, because I love to rip on the party.
It's bigger than this election.
Yeah, and but that's where I think we need, like, I love the 1848 project. I like the mentorship idea for local candidates, and we need mentorship though at the state level. I think you need people who have served. You need, I mean, like when Voss retires, he needs to, he's been obviously mentoring while he's, been on the job, but, he needs to be mentoring. Rebecca needs to continue to mentor. I mean, all of these people need to mentor the next generation and help equip them so that they're not bad candidates, and they have to have a hand in helping to select and build a bench and whatever. Like we have so many great, talented, smart people in the state. We can do this. We just have to build better systems.
I think a lot of times the world of politics, especially like from a political operative standpoint, it's a relatively small group of people. And so, yeah, mentorship is important. I think a lot of times, because it is such a small group of people, you have people who don't exactly want to help lift up the next generation of operatives because they're worried that, oh shit, if this person becomes really good, they're going to take an opportunity from me.
Yep.
And, again, I get it. It's a very competitive world, but like from my perspective, like I don't want to be doing this forever. I want to be able to build up. We need more quality people. And if you take a job from me, great. It's because you deserve it. Like,
there's
not
plenty
always
of
the
work
mindset.
around.
Yeah, like there's plenty of work around. We are always the pivotal swing state in the state of Wisconsin, and I think that's a big reason why it makes it hard to everybody agrees there needs to be change in the party, but it makes it hard from a timeline perspective because we're always in a tough election cycle, and so the logic is, well, we can't get rid of them now because there's another Supreme Court race or there's a governor's race. And I don't know what the fix is there because you're always going to be in a bad time, but eventually you're just kind of,
you got to do it at some time.
Do it eventually.
Got to rip
right?
the Band-Aid off at some point. So, I mean, plus there's also the consideration that, I mean, you're in such a tough position where there's a financial incentive for the chairmanship now, but usually the people that are successful don't care about the money, and why would I hassle myself with this? So it's kind of like a catch-22, and you probably do need someone that's younger, ambitious, wants a hard job, but you also need someone that has already somewhat proven themselves. I mean, we can't just hey, I'm a big advocate for the next generation, young people, but you also just can't just YOLO the first 20 or 30 or even sometimes 40-year-old, depending on their experience level, into the position and just say, well, have at it.
Mm-hmm. Nicole, I'll give you the last word before if consideration for your time.
Yeah.
So I'll let you go ahead.
Thank you. I think I'm happy that we're having these conversations. Like I said at the beginning, I fundamentally believe that the people of Wisconsin are reasonable, hardworking, morally sound, possess good judgment. And I think that what it takes is being willing to understand what issues and what issues motivate them and what they're really going through. And you have to be a candidate that's willing to, get in the ring and fight. And we have to do a better job of communicating to voters, and we have to build a better apparatus to support our candidates. And that's, it's really no more difficult than that. So, I guess I'll continue to do my part, and I hope everyone continues to do theirs.
So, Shadow Gov and Nicole hit on something that I want to mention is that the youth movement is really strong right now. And I know it's not just at the turning point level and the AFP level where you've got young people doing the work that needs to be done. Even though I have been critical of the way WisGOP hires folks from, college Republicans in Madison and nowhere else, and then just slowly promotes them internally. So, people who have actual experience, on the doors at, with AFP or with Turning Point, they're chomping at the bit to get a cut of, making the Wisconsin GOP a success. And, we had the youth movement in some candidates Shadow Gov?
Well, I think we have I know that there's a lot of doom and gloom, but there is a lot to be happy about in like maybe 6 or 8 years. Like it's going to be a while. But I think we have some great candidates for Supreme Court that would be great additions to the Supreme Court. And I think they have the ability to run the race that is necessary to win, actually, and the funding to do it as well. And so we might, in the short term, it might get worse. In many respects, it probably will. My worst fear is that we get a 7-0 liberal majority on the Supreme Court. And although most people say, well, they're just all going to vote with each other, which, yes, they probably will, but they will probably be, and this would be, I think what they would do is they would throw their votes. You would get 4-3 decisions all the time, or 5-2, depending on who's up for re-election, and then they could just market themselves. Well, I disagreed with my colleagues. 30-40% of the time.
Strategy.
And then you know what they can run? They can run as the bipartisan. They can run as the nonpartisan. They can run as obviously they'll still telegraph their values, of course, but they have the advantage in funding, turnout. They really don't have to play it too risky, and they could run on their record, as a Supreme Court justice. But there is a lot to look forward to for our candidates.
Yeah, one win that I think we missed earlier, largely because it was an under the radar race because he was unopposed. But Anthony Lococo, Anthony Lococo is a young, up and coming judge. He just won an unopposed election to the 2nd District Court of Appeals, and he was unopposed first of all because he chased a long-time, well-funded, well-established liberal Democrat off the bench, and Lisa Neubauer. She retired. She looked at Anthony's record-setting fundraising totals. I mean, Anthony was basically outraising or matching Maria Lazar in fundraising for a while for an appeals court seat. That says a lot about her fundraising, but also says a lot about Anthony's. And then he had another candidate that emerged very late, and then she doesn't know how election papers work, so she got kicked off the ballot. It's bad when even the libs on WEC are like, yeah, you're too stupid to be on the bench. Credit
to the YRs, and I think Kyle Schrader gets the nod for finding that out.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was a big thing to be able to just boot her off, because then that's one less race to worry about. But I mean, you before he was unopposed, you look at the message that Lococo was bringing. He was actively campaigning on issues without crossing the line or telling people this is how I'm going to rule. But he would tell you, when I was at the Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty, I fought against boys and girls locker rooms. I fought for parental rights. I fought against it was, and he actively ran on conservative values while Maria Lazar ran from them. You look at Grant Scaife in Washington County, the first thing that's on his lit piece around his website is conservative for judge. And it's red meat issues that he's
I'm assuming
about.
Right after that, it was Evers' appointee.
Yeah.
Just go back and listen to our interview. I know he won. I know that you're going to think, I don't need to listen to it, but go back and just listen to it for a couple minutes, and then go listen to Maria Lazar in Upfront and tell me which
or the candidate. Maria Lazar and the Dan O'Donnell interview. That is the most we listen to a lot of political interviews. The flubs. There are 2 instances that I physically grimace at. Okay. I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it. And one of them really isn't that big of a deal, but Tony Evers at the DNC can't get out how he's flubbing his words at the DNC
jazzed.
Because he had too many spotted cows or whatever. And it was just so painful.
And it was after 6 p.m. and he was probably sundowning.
It was like a full minute of him just going in front of 10,000 people or whatever. But somehow worse than that is when Dan O'Donnell's doing the interview with Maria, and credit to Brooks for clipping it, but Dan is quite literally leading her to water. Can't make the horse drink though. And she says that, I think liberals should vote because do you want a singular thought, a one ideology on the bench?
Yeah.
And that's what we get.
do.
That's what we're
That's
getting.
what they want.
Yeah, 100%.
Have you looked at the other elections?
But
this
that's
is exactly what
as
they
you guys
want.
talked about, that's the condescension that Maria had for the voter. She thought she was so intelligent and so above the political fray that the left would see Chris Taylor for what she was, which is a partisan hack. She thought, oh, I'm the smart one. I have the judicial ethics. And she thought that, again, the Democrats from 1996 were all of a sudden going to show up and vote for the one who's not a crazy leftist progressive socialist. And what did that get her?
Well, just join us in the muck. That's the lesson. You got to join us in the muck. I mean, come on, it's kind of fun too. I know I judge, non-partisan or whatever, but like, come on, this is your opportunity to like get just like an ounce of politicalness and you don't have to cross the line. But like Maria and a lot of judicial candidates are like 10,000 yards away from the line. Like you can get close. And like Janet Protasiewicz, she crossed the line. She did. And that was the whole impeachment nonsense and everything. She got way too close. But like Lococo, you just have to be a little bit smart. These people, you go to law school, you get all the fancy law degrees, and God bless those people. I couldn't do that, but we need to have like a political school or something for some people, and like there's ways to do this.
Yeah, and not only did Anthony Lococo talk about the issues that people care about, he talked about them like a normal, regular person. And that's the second part of it. It's one thing to talk about the issues, but it's also another thing to be able to communicate it like a regular, relatable human being. Like, seriously, it kind of fell by the wayside once he didn't have an opponent because he didn't have to do these things as much anymore. But go back when he was running against Lisa Neubauer. That should be the playbook for conservative judicial candidates going forward. Look at how Grant Scaife ran his campaign. That should be the playbook for conservative judicial candidates going forward. And it brings me a lot of hope. Now, to Shadow Governor Voss's point, it might take a little bit. I mean, the fact that the two biggest bright spots from our legal bench haven't even been sworn in yet, it might be a little bit too early to be like, yeah, they're going to be Supreme Court candidates in a couple years. But
we're allowed to glaze a little bit.
Yeah, but we need to start building that bench by, again, the vast majority of these circuit court seats are 45%, at least 45% of circuit court judges in in conservative counties, red counties that Trump won. A lot of them that he won by, as Shadow Governor Voss says, Assad margins. And you have just bleeding heart libs there.
Yeah.
Lindsey Boone Brunette, who is going to be the liberal Supreme Court candidate next year. She was going to run this year and then bowed out so that Chris Taylor could get it. She is a circuit court judge in Clark County out in northwestern Wisconsin. That's a Trump plus 39 county. Why the hell is she there? And I get, there are barriers to finding conservative legal people in those counties, in those rural counties, who are also willing to take a pay cut because it's not paying as much as your private practice job. I get that. Democrats will frickin' airdrop people from Milwaukee and Dane County into these deep red counties in rural Wisconsin, and they just sit there and they go uncontested. About 40% of DA's races are unopposed. A lot of those DAs go on to run for judge, and a lot of their ADAs go on to run for judge. Like, if we want to start building the conservative bench going forward, it starts by finding people like Grant Scaife and like Anthony Lococo and actually just trying to win these seats.
Yeah.
And you don't win them by running as Republican light. You run them by running as Republicans, as conservative. Just once, I wish that our judicial candidates were half the right-wing extremists that the left say we are.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
They're going to call us that anyway.
They're going to call you that anyway. I mean,
Yeah.
not to belabor the point with Maria's abortion messaging, but she spent all this time and energy trying to get ahead in her mind, get ahead of the abortion issue.
They still did it to her.
And then a week before the election, the Journal Sentinel does a comparison piece where the lead is, you couldn't find two candidates who are further apart on abortion. It got her nowhere, except for the fact that it alienated pro-life voters who either did not know that she was the conservative choice, or they just stayed home because they're like, you're not. During the debate, she shit on a heartbeat bill that's overwhelmingly popular with Republican voters and has been for decades.
Why didn't she could have just gone with like the Ron Johnson referendum strategy?
Which I think that's what she was trying to do, but she did it so poorly.
Well, I didn't pick it up. Because I think the referendum idea is It's good, but it's like you're not prejudging any cases. You're allowing the people get to decide. So. And speaking of Assad margins, I had to double check this, and it's so bad, but people need to know this. Of course, obviously, the People's Republic of Dane County is like just a vote sink for Democrats. It's insane what they do there. I wish we could replicate it somewhere. And I believe it was City of Madison, Ward 19, which
where that is Willie Street. I thought one of them was like Willie Street, and she won it like 2,700 to 19.
Not quite. There's not that quite many
many
people.
19 votes. It was probably less.
But it was like 1,800 votes to like 37.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So if you do the math, that's 98%. Okay. So Anthony Lococo, I mean, if we put him on the ballot for Supreme Court, I'm expecting 100%, victory margin for Anthony. But in all seriousness, though, I'm not saying that, if she would have been more partisan that you would get, she would get 95% and that would be the difference maker. However, this is the reality. Like these, especially on abortion, the abortion messaging, they're going to paint you however they're going to paint you, and they're going to get Assad margins in Dane County, and you're going to have to figure something else out. And abortion was her only message besides being an impartial justice.
Yeah.
That was it.
And not a conservative, not a Republican.
1 and 2. That was it. I know I don't like the crime ads all that much anymore, but like that's just super easy. Like talking about illegals, illegal immigration, illegal crime. Like there's just so many things left. And yes, the voting record. And then what do you get? You get your 98% Assad margins in Dane County. And there was a stat also that said you could remove all the votes out of Dane County, and Chris Taylor still wins by like 6,000 votes.
That's insane.
So you could proverbially nuke Dane County.
But it speaks to, I know she ran a terrible campaign. I know she had no money and she didn't do a whole lot. But, one of the reasons why Republicans lose Dane County, of course, they're going to lose it by the margins they have, is because they refuse to campaign there. They've thrown in the towel. Maria Lazar, did she even go to any Dane County YR, any can't?
I think she's going to the county party stuff, but those are people who are already voting for you.
Yeah.
Like, yes, you still need to go to them because you need to motivate, but like that should not be your last week of the campaign. Like when your last event stop is a meet and greet with the Waukesha GOP, those people have already met you a million times.
True. But that's why she should be campaigning more in Dane County. Like my point was going to be that like Tim Michaels rode off Dane County and lost. Ron Johnson campaigned in Dane County and won. It's about just showing up. And you're going to have these Assad numbers, but 98% can become 94 or 90.
Well, it's just
pretty quickly.
It's only like a handful of votes per ward
that
you need to flip an election. So when you break it down on that micro level, and plus people act like Madison is all of Dane County. Like Madison is really not that large in Dane County. Like there's a ton of suburbs and farm country.
And a lot of those suburbs are, they still have some conservatives. They still elect some conservatives on their boards. And, it's still some rural areas.
You have a place like Sun Prairie, which yes, is still very liberal, but it's also basically Epstein's Island for, high schoolers. How do you not tap into that energy there? And I'm not saying you need to make that a focal point, but like you can bring that up when you're talking about all the other like weird lefty woke shit. And I mean, just to go back to Lococo in the Court of Appeals race again, he was unopposed. I get that, and it'd be interesting to see how things would have shaken up had he had an opponent. I mean, I still feel confident he would have won.
I think he would have run circles.
And frankly, I think he would have been the de facto top of the ticket in this area because.
He would have actually had to spend money
because he was actually motivating Republicans to vote.
Yeah.
Maria Lazar lost her own appellate court seat. Sorry. She won her appellate court seat by 1.5 points. And it's Schimmel won this appellate court region by 10 last year in a bad environment.
Yeah.
Like he lost statewide by 10, but still carried the appellate court seat by 10. When the people who have already elected you once, you're only getting a 1.5 victory there. That's not good. Now, if Lococo has an opponent, I'm not saying it's a 1.5 point rate. I think he runs ahead of Maria in that area because he's actually running a real campaign. But I'm sure Lisa Neubauer's looking at those numbers right now being like, shit, maybe I should have ran.
Yeah.
You could have made it competitive.
Could have made it competitive. But I mean, Lococo is someone who, again, he did what I want to see out of a modern conservative judge in this world. And, I'd be remiss to point out that there is a generational gap between a lot of the old heads in the conservative legal community and these younger people who grew up in an age of Trump and grew up with all these issues. And they see things very, very differently than these people who, never really have to deal with real conservative voters because they don't go out and talk to them, right? They're not listening to podcasts like this. They're not going out, they're going to all the Christmas parties and all the country club gatherings and the bar association meetings, and that's it. And that's why there is such a just lack of awareness of what real voters actually want, and frankly, a resentment of what real voters want.
Yep. But and I don't want to overhype what we're doing here. I don't. I know we're a growing fish. We're this month for our listenership is going to be the best.
Got to start somewhere.
But who came on our show? Like Josh Showman, first person to reach out. Tom Tiffany reached out shortly thereafter. John Livers come on the show. We've had Grant Scaife. We've had Matt Rosick. They wanted to come on. I get texts occasionally from people who want to be on as a candidate, and we're going to have them on. We're going to have him on before convention.
We're going to have Anthony Lococo on eventually.
Yeah. And I told Anthony, I went to a fundraiser with him, and he talked exactly like Eric said. And I said, the minute you have an opponent, you're on the pod. But he chased Lisa Neubauer off, and they kept the other on off, and
we had to focus on the people that had to actually win their election.
And I'm not trying to overinflate what we do or my ego, but Maria we never had a single moment of a campaign to reach out to them, and we would have had her on 100%. But maybe she saw conservative and thought I shouldn't be on this. I don't know what it was.
And obviously we had one episode where we talked about the race, and we got quoted by the Democrats.
Yeah, we got put in a hit piece.
Yeah, but.
Hey, Better Wisconsin Together. How you guys doing?
Yeah, so I guess good that you're listening, I suppose. Or they just scrape probably just the transcript and Control F. But then after that, we left it alone because I'm not, it's really easy to, like Brooks said, you just bash on them and then you just kind of become the Monday morning quarterback. Letter, we gave the criticism, take it as you will, and then kind of let it go.
Yeah, we see the path moving forward with the state party.
And then we got a scenario where Chris Taylor actually got more raw votes in some municipalities than Kamala Harris did. So, and this is just a point, I know we're ducking and weaving a little bit. Yes, it's a turnout issue, but that's a persuasion thing too. Okay. So like getting more raw votes than Kamala, I mean, that's presidential turnout and then some. So it's like, now it wasn't across the board, but you look at on the Bird app, and there was a couple people point out some select municipalities, and it might have been a handful of votes, in this municipality or that. But to get more votes than the presidential ticket, I don't even care if it's Kamala and she was unpopular. Presidential Democrat turnout, and then additional votes as well. That's a persuasion. You're persuading extra people, unless you're just turning out an insane amount of Democrats that just, I guess, were registered in the last year or something. So that's all just compounding on obviously the candidate themselves. And that I just wanted to make sure that people turnout is an issue, but that's kind of a crutch. A lot of people use it as a crutch that, shucks, we just didn't turn out enough people, which is true, but persuasion does play a part in it as well.
With that, fellas, I think we got to talk about one little piece of candy that happened this week. And of course, it's going to stay in the political realm. But Tom Tiffany held a press conference on the steps of the Capitol, and lo and behold, everyone's favorite 1%er showed up, Kelda Roys. And we're just going to play this clip and talk about it briefly here.
What is your response? I mean, how are you going to hold him accountable for this kind of very dangerous, violent rhetoric?
So did he bomb Iran?
Well, yes, he did. He started a war with Iran. He's been bombing Iran.
But did he at, 8 o'clock last night? Wasn't that when it was supposed to be called for? By the way,
yes.
I would just share with all of you, Senator Roys is doing this in an attempt to get her campaign off the ground because her numbers are so low that she has to come out and talk to me in order to elevate her poll numbers. That's why she's here to talk to me.
Well, I'm here because I represent
Good luck
voters
to
in
you.
Wisconsin, and they deserve answers. Every American deserves an answer.
Yeah, you've got
We have a president.
You have a
that is
congressional
lawless.
representative, Mark Pocan, would be happy to answer your question.
And Mark does answer my
Tammy
questions.
Baldwin.
But you know, I talk to your
Jim Justice.
constituents every day, and they say that you don't answer their questions. What about the farmers whose health insurance that you voted to take away? What about the tariffs that are crushing our small businesses?
Oh, so this is not about Iran. It's about
all
many
these
other things.
It's about, will you hold this president
Good luck.
accountable?
Good
Will
luck
you
getting
be
your
independent?
campaign off the ground, Senator.
Get bodied.
Oh my God.
It's just a, you know, Kelda, she's got the right idea. Like this is exactly what she has to do. She needs to get a viral moment to like just jumpstart
Did
her
not
dead
go the way
campaign.
that she thought it was going.
She
to go.
woke up that morning, looked in the mirror and said, "This is the day." And she was so proud. What about Iran? Goes right in there and just gets dunked on.
I love it, and God bless Tom for not taking the bait. You know, a lot of politicians, although I'm not a politician, I do take the bait where someone will say something and I'm like, I have to defend it. Like, no, you're incorrect, and I'm going to tell you why. Tom just bypasses all of that and just says, come on, we know why you're here. You got 1%. You're just trying to double that, okay? And this is how you do it. You just nip at the heels of the Republican frontrunner and candidate for governor.
Yeah, it was just beautiful to see. I mean, and not just because we're dunking on the libs. I mean, obviously that's a big part of it, but especially after seeing what we saw in the Supreme Court race, seeing Tom do that, it was so refreshing because that's the thing that actually does motivate Republican voters. They want to see someone who fights and someone who's not going to put up with that performative bullshit that Kelda Roys was coming at him with. I mean, look, Kelda is somebody who has just been desperately trying to. This has been her. She was born and wanted to be governor. She wanted to be in power. She's been doing this for years. This is someone who is so shameless that she pretended to be gay when running against a openly gay man in Mark Pocan, which I love that Tom. I don't know if Tom did this intentionally. I think he did.
I think
that he's just sprinkled that little Pocan thing in there. And if you don't get it, you don't get it. But Kelda got it, and he threw that in there. I mean, this is the woman who was fundraising off of Andre Jock being, in a hospital bed off of COVID. Mm-hmm. This is the woman who, even before Evers made his announcement that he wasn't running, went on a Wasai show and was asked, do you think Governor Evers should run for a third term? Well, most people only serve two because she has wanted this forever. And one of my favorite Kelda Roys facts is that when she was at NYU, she designed her own major in political science, like theater arts, and some other bullshit lefty thing. She literally majored in political theater, and that's exactly what this was. When you see her walking up, you're just like, all right, well, this is going to be some just theater kid nonsense. And rather than engaging in it and trying to, defend the position or take the bait, Tom just called it out for what it was. And it completely killed what she was trying to do. She edits it out of her video, so it's only the Iran part, because obviously
that's not even a good clip, though.
It's not. No, it's not. And well, he did bomb Iran. Yeah, that's not what you were talking about. Like, we all are aware that Trump bombed Iran and he killed Mandela's friend. But
Ayatollah, yeah.
Like, I mean, that is why I know a lot of people want to extrapolate Tuesday's results into November. And yes, like there are warning signs there, and there are lessons to be learned if we are willing to actually learn them. I think there are some people who don't want to learn them. But it's a totally different race. And I think what we're seeing from Tom and what we're seeing from his communications team at Tiffany War Room, they're willing to take on this fight. They're willing to get down in the mud and throw elbows and throw punches with these people because they understand what's at stake and they understand what's necessary to win a campaign. That's something that, again, it's a different race than a Supreme Court race, but they're really not. The Supreme Court races are becoming on par with governor's races. Our candidates just aren't willing to admit that yet. And until they do, we're going to continue to get 10, 20-point losses like we're seeing.
the one thing I want to remind folks who, probably a bit on the younger side, maybe don't remember this, but it was, we talk about candidate quality matters. And with Tom Tiffany, I think we have a great candidate. And I think the Dems are looking at a situation where their best candidates are at bottom of the polling, and their weakest candidates that have the most baggage are at the top. And it reminds me of a bit about 2006. So 2006, big wipeout year for the Republican side. But there was one statewide candidate that won. And that's J.B. Van Hollen, because he ran against Peg Schottenlager or, Goldenschlager, she was a bad candidate. And before the Republican wave year in 10, we got J.B. Van Hollen because good candidate, and that candidate quality matters. And right now, the Republicans have the advantage there.
Well, it's looking so far so good, and looking forward to more hongmentum. So looking forward to we're not endorsing.
No, but we should talk for just touch on this for a second as we wrap up here. Operation Chaos is gaining steam.
There's no coordination. This is just genuine. Republicans for Hong.
I'm seeing it more and more on Twitter. And Republicans for Hong, we could be those guys, and we can invite her on the show
for the primary.
And she is welcome whenever she wants.
No. I don't know if with that conversation,
we got to talk about that.
She might beat me for most F-bombs ever said on the pod. So
yeah.
Well, we got to find out, and that open invitation is there. And with that, folks, man, for all the losses we took this week, I was so excited when I found out that Eric Brooks and Nicole Balistreri were going to be on the show with us tonight. They are two of my favorite guests that we've had on for now the second time, and I hope they'll join us again soon. So with that, I'm Justin Phillips. If you like what you hear, make sure to like, share, subscribe, drop us that 5-star review. Apple Podcasts and Spotify are our two most popular players, so please take a second there to give us that 5-star and even drop us, a review. Thank you to Eric Brooks and Nicole Balistreri for joining us tonight. Nicole, Eric, where can we find you on social, and what are you going to plug for us?
Well, you can follow me on X at Big Nick with no K, NIC Energy, and I hope to see you there. And if you are a candidate, or you are someone that likes what you heard from me, you can also contact me at www.that'sgoodcoms.com, and I'd be happy to help you.
Yeah, and if you like what you heard tonight, you can follow me at eBrooks Uncut on X. If you did not like what you heard tonight, you can follow me at RealCandaceO on X. And in terms of things to plug, as I mentioned earlier, article on theheartlandpost.com, I wrote kind of a deep dive into how we can build the conservative bench going forward, and that starts with starting to contest some of these local circuit court and DA races that we typically just leave open. That's the way that we start getting new, fresh people, this movement.
And you can follow me on X at Justin E. Phillips, ShadowGov at Robin_X_Stan. The pod at New Fashion Pod on X, YouTube, Rumble, and subscribe to our podcast on newfashionconservative.substack.com. And of course, you can read what we write as well on the Heartland Post. So with that, I hope you have a great Monday and a great week.